Hey there, McAllister with Toasty DIY, and today I want to talk about why I think I'm going to permanently switch to Pathfinder or at least another tabletop game for a long while. I've been playing D&D 5e for the past 10 years, or 10 coming up in November. My group and I have been playing for all that time, and D&D is great, but I had a group move away, and we started playing online, and I really didn't want to do that, so I told them, let's play something different, so at least there's something for me there, because I am that neurodivergent that loves rulebooks. I just like to read them, and so I said, let's play Pathfinder. I think I gave them some options. I really want to play Draw Steel, but they chose Pathfinder, and now that I've played it for a few months, I really can say it is ultimately better than D&D, but I have a few caveats and notes. The first one being, if you're looking to run your first game, I would not recommend running Pathfinder. Now, if you and your players are all new and you really want to play Pathfinder, then that's a different reason. But if you're looking for a first game to play and I'm telling you Pathfinder's better, I don't think the initial challenge of Pathfinder is going to be a better experience for you than the initial challenge of D&D 5e. D&D 5e will leave a lot of the rules to, I don't know, ask your DM. And that is powerful if you're the DM because you can keep things rolling because you decide, and it builds a table atmosphere where the table respects your decision. If you play Pathfinder and you have a power gamer who likes to read the rules, they might learn more about the rules than you do, and then they would be attacking you with rules they understand that you don't yet, that are the rules and they've been written down in this playbook. And the problem is, in Pathfinder, they're probably going to be right because the rules are written and that's how you run it. Like there is answers for almost every question, or there are answers for almost every question. You know, how long can I hold my breath? How far can I jump? These probably have answers in the rule book since it's so thick. But in D&D 5e, a lot of those things are left to you to decide. But there's power in both of those things. When you have a book where all the things are written, your players can kind of, I've experienced this playing outside of the game. We can theorize strategies because the situation doesn't really matter. If the problem is we have an enemy in front of us, it doesn't matter who or what the enemy is. We can theorize what actions we take in what order because they have names. D&D 5e, the way people typically run it is when they have their main action, that's do whatever you want. It's not like a action to spend ratio. When you play Baldur's Gate, it is. You see exactly what an action is. I spend an action to dash. I do this. It feels less like a static economy and more like a relative guideline. Oh, you have an action, a minor action, which is like can't be as major, or you have a bonus action, which only comes up if you're lucky or if you have an ability, and then you move. That's it. Makes sense to me. And in that relative sense, it does make a general vibe on like what is a minor, what is a major. But then the important thing is like, here's this game ending item. And this player says, I want to hand it off to another guy. Like I want to hand the one ring. And that feels major, but they want to attack on their turn. This is the end of the game. This may be the last time they get to play their character, but it's really strong to hand off the one ring, wouldn't it be? So do you tell them no? Well, it's handing someone, which says it's a minor action, but it probably says somewhere in there unless the DM states otherwise. So kind of gets weird. Meanwhile, in Pathfinder, that's a manipulate action. We can name it, we can point to it, we can reference it, and we can explain it, and we can do that. And the nice thing is for you as the DM, if you have to run Pathfinder because let's say your players are demanding it, you can tell your players, I don't know, tell me. What do you think happens? Like, we all have access to Google. Don't act like I know all the rules. We all realize this book is too big. And I often say, they ask if they can do something, and I say, here's how I think it would work. I think that you'd use a manipulate action to do it. Then you could use a free action to drop it. And then a manipulate action for your, or command animal for them to take their turn and pick up the thing you dropped. This all makes sense to me because when you played the game, you start seeing the actions integrate like a combo chain in a game. You're starting to see it work. But in Pathfinder, it is a set economy. You have 3 actions, and those 3 actions can be any of the things. You're never looking at I think it's 2 actions to do that. It tells you, is it 1 or is it 2 or is it 3? It's written down. Do you want to jump? Well, guess what? Leap is an action. Do you want to squeeze through a spot? Squeeze is an action. When you're squeezing, there are rules upon you for squeezing. How far can you move when you swim? Do you have to spend an action to stay afloat? These sorts of things are all written. And while that is daunting and difficult, and I do understand that's not for everyone, it is nice because if you're unsure, there is an answer. If you're not an improver and you don't know how to make one up, you can say, I don't know, let's find it together. And while it will grind a halt to the game, if you're not confident, you have a backup. We don't have to get to a spot where your judgment is called into question by a group of players. Because if you're nervous about improving and then you pick something and people don't seem to like it, You chose the thing they didn't like, and they know that. And that makes you feel awkward because you were just trying to keep the story the way you thought in your head made sense. But if you're newer, they might question your thing and give you that look. And oh my God, I hate that look when I get that one from players, but it is what it is. You're going to have times where you're going to get that look of like, but you made me pay too. And now you've changed it. It's like, that was 3 weeks ago. And I forgot the rule I set because it's open-ended. Well, meanwhile, in Pathfinder, if you learn something, it kind of stays static. It doesn't often change. You don't have a moment next week where something's new. It's the same action, maybe just applied in a different context, but it's a base action. When it comes to enemy diversity and variety, Pathfinder, by leaps and bounds, makes use of systems that D&D 5e just doesn't. Now, it's much harder to run them without prep work because there's so much built into these characters and their different systems. But take skeletons, for instance, in D&D 5e. Everyone, they first start, thinks like, I think it's turn undead does radiant damage. The radiant damage doesn't do double damage to undead. And that's sad because I think everything has told you that necromancy is dark magic and radiant damage should be holy magic. So necrotic is the opposite of radiant. You'd think probably fire is the opposite of cold damage. These sorts of things just make sense in your head. And D&D very seldom takes full advantage of resistances or vulnerabilities because in the game, it is kind of all or nothing. If you are vulnerable to it, it's double damage. But if you're resistant to it, it's half damage. And then you are either that or invulnerable. And so it's either none or double, kind of both the ways. And so it just ends up being like on or off. It's very binary. Meanwhile, in Pathfinder, you're going to find yourself oftentimes attacking something and then finding out it has resistance and having to switch your strategy up. I've had many a time where our characters have ended up punching a skeleton because it does more damage, because just by punching the thing, they automatically get an extra 5 damage added to their roll because skeletons are brittle. And therefore they have what's called I believe, flaw. They have a weakness to bludgeonings, which means that if you roll 1 bludgeoning damage, they automatically add on 5 because you did that. But if you roll for piercing, you have to deal above 5 damage before it even starts to count, which is such an interesting way. But I always have a struggle with how complex should the mechanic be for the reward you're getting out of it. Like, does it tell a better story, but is it too time wasting? Is it more fun? Or is it really a drag? Is it just in my head that this seems fun because that's the way I like to play? And I've just found with our players, we've enjoyed Pathfinder so much more online. And they were some of my, day ones playing. They were my day ones playing. So that I know they know what D&D is like. And when you build a character in D&D, after at least 10 years, which is a good amount of playtime, not arguing, you start to just see the curve sell them out, that almost every character ends up being similar and runs the same way and plays the same way. They fall into archetypes, which is always going to happen. Of course, when you pick classes, you'll find archetypal characters arrive, but the way they do the archetypes tend to be the same way. The only way to run a real tank is to run sword and board. Like, you can't really get many ways to tank outside of be a barbarian with a two-handed weapon if you want to really prevent as much damage as possible. You've got to play something with sword and shield, otherwise you're missing a +2 to your AC. And then the shield's function is only a +2 to your AC, which is simple. And this is an example of simple use case versus Pathfinders, which has shields with toughness that must be raised as an action. And when they get hit, they can get damaged and break. And that's a lot to track and to do. But it does feel real. Like the 18 skeleton attack finally pounds into your thing and they break your shield and it shatters on your arm. And now you're left with just your sword. But you prevented about 20 damage with that shield. And now later in the dungeon, you're strapping it together with rivets and slamming them with a hammer because you brought a repair kit. Because this is something that happens to you because you're the tank. You just get to express yourself more in Pathfinder. There's less static attributes you're going to have to take for what you do, but there also leads to this game of kind of having to min-max, because I will tell you, the monsters are made for characters that are not more well-rounded but are sharpened to a knife. You are the DPS for your team. You may take a lot of damage, but if you are protected properly, you are the spear, and you will wail into enemies. You are the mage. You are going to cast spells and you need to sit in the back. And when you cast a spell, you need to genuinely think, is this thing fast? Is it tough? Or is it smart? because that's the 3 saves it's going to use for most every spell: fortitude, reflex, or wisdom, or willpower. I forget the one. When you look at those 3, that's the only 3 that it can be. And so when you're going to cast Electric Arc on goblins, they have a high reflex save. Well, it'd be great to hit them both. If they pass, they take no damage. So maybe it would have been better to blow debris at them, like fog, and hit their fortitude, because they're little goblins, of course. If they're fast, they're not usually going to be tanky. They're not going to be very smart either, but they're smarter than maybe you give them credit for. So you look at these things and you can look at a character and actually roll a dice and ask, what's their stat line? That's built into the rules. It's called recall knowledge. You can roll a recall knowledge check, and if it's a druidic creature, then having nature lets you roll a lower dice. But if you just roll, maybe it's a treant and you are a druid of the treant grove, so you have a lore, a special lore, only you have it in your party, called treant lore. And so you get to roll this dice and say, get an 8 or higher, you win, and it's a +6. The math in Pathfinder gets so much higher. It's crazy. At level 3, you can be rolling +12s to hit. It's really cool because you crit not just on a natural 20, you crit on 10 above their stat, which means you can do some pretty amazing things pretty early, but you can also be hit just as hard very early. It's ride or die in those beginning levels. You can just be snapped out of existence by a good hit, but you can also one-shot a level like a CR3 creature because you hit a natural 20. It's pretty awesome. I think it's a lot more intricate, dynamic, dramatic than it is in 5e, because you have 3 actions and they can all be spent attacking, but you'll very likely miss. And so you have to think of more creative ways to play the game, or you're really leaving damage on the table. Are you going to flank enemies, stand behind them directly opposed to another ally? They get -2 to their AC. Stand behind your ally, get a +1 circumstance bonus to your AC. You can try to stack these bonuses by hiding, shifting, doing these things that you tend to do in D&D, but to a less extent. A lot of battles end up just being I stand next to them, I do my main ability, and I move on. You still have that here in Pathfinder, but you can do double strike, power attack, exacting strike, tripping, feign, disarm, grab, shove. These are all mechanics that you're more likely to deal with than you do. You could build a character all around having, a rapier in one hand and then disarming them with a disarming dagger in your left hand. You could do one where your whole point is grabbing them and punching them. You can play a brawler that way, and your bit is just grabbing them so they're immobilized, so your team can move in and flank them. You can do so much more, I find, in this system. It's a lot more free. While you can do all this in D&D 5e, your DM may not allow it. Some of the things may not be kind of understood or explained, so that it leads to a lot of grinding to a halt. Well, in Pathfinder, you'll grind to a halt once. Once you've learned the rule, that player, if they want to keep doing that, will probably remember the rule for you and then continue to do that shtick over and over and over again. And they have room to change and grow. When it comes to weapons and bonuses, you get ruins that can change it to fire weapons, double damage, make them intimidated, all sorts of things over here in Pathfinder, at a system in which you can really do it rather easily. Just buy the ruin and plop it in, versus D&D 5e where you've got to find the specific magic item. There's no moving a property from one sword to another. Like if you get a war axe that deals +6 extra damage, you can't pluck +6 extra damage and put on a new weapon, so you're stuck with that war axe forever, or until your DM allows you to do some way to transfer it over. Meanwhile, in Pathfinder, almost every weapon bonus is due to its type of metal. Is it cold iron, or is it steel? Is it brittle? Whatever it is, you can find out what it's made out of and maybe melt it down to a new weapon. But otherwise, you can take ruins and plop them off. This one that intimidates, you plop it right off and put on another one. And it makes it way easier to see where your upgrades are going and how you need to upgrade. Do you do it on your offhand weapon and your main one? Or do you get doubling rings so that they both share the properties? There's a lot of cool ways. And I just think in the overall, I've blabbed for a while. If you're looking at which one to play, I think you should always play Pathfinder if you can. If you're looking to run one, I think you should run D&D 5e first. And when you're comfortable making stuff up, use those rules to cover your ass when you start playing Pathfinder. And since you have players, hopefully at this point, who know what they're doing, if they ask if they can do something for the first time, tell them to look it up. I think that that's acceptable. I think that in D&D 5e, asking them to look it up is a pretty moot effort, because half the time it'll be you decide as the DM. And so I think you should just make those decisions. But in Pathfinder, I have no problem saying, I don't know. Does that work? And then they have to look at the rule and they're like, oh, you actually give me an opposed athletics check. And I go, great. And last note, actually, just something that's so obvious that you'll learn and maybe even talk about is your players love rolling dice, and it's hard to convince them not to roll them at random times for no reason because they just love rolling dice. Dice are random, they don't give a shit about the story. I hate random rolling of dice because it doesn't add to the narrative, guaranteed. Good role playing always will add to the narrative. Making a decision adds to the narrative, but rolling a dice and ending up with a random outcome does not always serve the greater story. In Pathfinder, there are some rolls that the DM makes for the player. You ask their bonus and you roll it. Because when you stealth into a room, you shouldn't know if they saw you. You'll know when they yell, "Hey, who are you?" Insight checks are the same way. Some rolls are rolled by the DM, and you ask them their bonus. So your bonus still counts, but the DM gets to tell you whether you believe them. So when you insight check someone, I'll roll it. You get a +7. I roll 3. You get a 10 overall. I know that's not good enough, but it's average. If you rolled a 10, you're going to start construing all these details to that 10 that make the role playing less genuine. The big problem is like rolling a nat 1 on an insight check is oftentimes like you have to believe them now. It's not always that, but it's just like the vibe you get is very far one direction. You believe them, you don't believe them, you hate them. They're laughing at you. They think you're stupid. They think you're brilliant. You don't know which one. But when I tell you that and you got a nat 1, it's up to them to role play the correct response, whatever they decide that is. But as a player and as a character, they probably want different things. In this instance, if I tell them they love you, they have to assume it was a high or a low roll and they don't know which one. So they have to just act as if that's what they believe because that's all they know is that they do, in fact, get the vibe that they love them. I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. So if you have any questions, leave them down below. But otherwise, peace.